Welcome to StopFake, the place where we identify fakes and debunk them to set the record straight on disinformation about Ukraine. I'm Marko Suprun with this week's dissections. Donbas talks on prisoner exchange collapse because of Ukraine. Ukraine will not sign declaration prohibiting torture in Donbas. And Crimeans who left after the Russian annexation are flocking home. Sound like fakes? Details ahead. Scores of Russian media reported that the latest talks on prisoner exchanges between Ukraine and the self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics held in Minsk last month allegedly broke down because of the Ukrainian member of parliament negotiating prisoner exchanges and other humanitarian issues walked out of the talks. Russian media cite Luhansk People's Republic Representative Olha Koptseva, who claims that the committee discussing the exchange of prisoners was forced to stop deliberations because Ukrainian MP Irina Herashchenko arrived an hour late and, rather than discuss the matters at hand, engaged in anti-Russian rhetoric and then suddenly left. Irina Herashchenko's version of events is somewhat different from Koptseva's. In a Facebook post, Herashchenko explains that the Minsk meeting was held as scheduled, but unfortunately did not yield results. She writes that Russia would not respond to Ukraine's initiatives aimed at prisoner swaps and categorically refuses to have Red Cross personnel visit Ukrainian prisoners held by Russian militants. The special representative of the OSCE in Ukraine, Ambassador Martin Saidik, makes no mention of any walkout in his press statement on the Minsk meeting. He writes that the Working Group on Humanitarian Issues continued its discussion on the exchange of detainees and also discussed the improvement of conditions for crossing the contact line. Now, this is not the first time that Russian media have claimed that Ukraine is sabotaging the Donbas talks. Earlier this year in May, StopFake debunked Russian claims that OSCE representatives walked out on Donbas talks because of Ukrainian threats. The Minsk agreements aimed at resolving the conflict in Ukraine's eastern Donbas region were signed in the Belarusian capital in February of 2015 by representatives of the Trilateral Contact Group, the OSCE, Ukraine, and Russia. Pro-Kremlin publications Ukraina.ru and the Luhansk Information Center announced that Ukraine is refusing to recognize torture in the occupied Donbas territory and opposes a declaration banning physical violence in the conflict zone. Human rights activist and humanitarian law specialist Yevgenia Andreyuk told StopFake this claim is highly manipulative and does not explain why Ukraine did not want to sign the anti-torture declaration. Ukraine's representative for humanitarian affairs at the Minsk talks, Irina Herashchenko, insisted that the declaration include condemnation of Russia's actions in eastern Ukraine, but the text presented by Russian-supported separatists made no mention of any Russian involvement or responsibility, and that is why Ukraine did not sign the declaration, Andreyuk explained. Another reason why Ukraine would not sign the document is Russia's refusal to allow Red Cross access to the occupied territories and Crimea. In a Facebook post, Herashchenko explained that Ukraine categorically condemns all methods of oppression and torture and insists that the declaration also include a point about mandatory and unhindered Red Cross access to Ukrainian prisoners being held in Russia, Crimea, and the occupied territories. Crimeans who massively left the peninsula after it was annexed by Russia in 2014 are beginning to return home, announced Grigory Yoffe, the chairman of Crimea's Public Chamber, an organization that supposedly monitors the interest of ordinary citizens in the legislative process. Ukraina.ru, Rambler, and other propaganda sites quickly disseminated Yoffe's claims. Prior to the Russian occupation of Crimea, Yoffe held high positions in the region's parliament. He claims that Crimeans' rights are being grossly violated in mainland Ukraine. Crimeans are increasingly disillusioned with Ukraine's nationalistic leadership and are therefore returning to the peninsula in large numbers. Yoffe's statement contradicts even official Russian data on returning Crimeans. According to the Crimean State Statistics Office, the number of Crimean residents that left the peninsula in 2018 has quadrupled compared to 2017. Crimeans leaving Crimea are not bound for neighboring Russia, but for CIS countries, and this is how Russian authorities refer to Ukraine. Responding to StopFake's inquiry about migration between Ukraine and Crimea, Ukraine's State Border Service spokesman Andriy Demchenko said that passenger traffic from the mainland is decreasing from year to year. According to the latest data, this year's June border crossings decreased by 6% compared to the same period last year. Late summer sees increased traffic to mainland Ukraine from Crimea, with students arriving for university entrance interviews. Demchenko emphasized it is completely wrong to talk about growing numbers of people returning to Crimea. According to Ministry of Social Policy data, immediately after the Russian annexation, some 33,000 Crimean residents left the peninsula. Kyiv officially considers these people internally displaced persons. Ukrainian Institute for the Future analyst Ihar Tishkevich told StopFake he suspects at least 200,000 people left Crimea after Russia annexed the territory. If people are returning, they are very few, he says, as people are aware how repressive and dangerous Crimea is for Ukrainians and for Crimean Tatars. Certainly the 30,000 who are receiving Ukrainian pensions and social aid are not going to return to Crimea, and even more so those who left Crimea for EU countries, Tishkevich pointed out. Thanks for tuning in this week. You can help preserve truth and true reality. Remember, if you spot any fakes about Ukraine, send them to us for a truth autopsy. And be vigilant. Don't consume fakes. Tips on how to do that are on our website, stopfake.org. I'm Marko Suprun, and this is StopFake.